Our next session talks about balancing scales at home, right? I will call our moderator for the session, Heena. Also, I will take a cue with Heena, who's a fellow biker, a mountaineer, but most identifies as a mother, but not only a mother to her children, but also a mother to the rescue animals that she works with, a mother to the abuse and drug abusers that she helps, the children that she helps. So, to balance scales at home, Heena, you and your panel.
Thank you, Anish. That was a great introduction. He had to dig into my brain to actually get me to say all those things. But today is a topic that we've been discussing, which is about gender equity in families at home. And you know, a fun fact is that, did you know that there were 62% of Indian women and men, 64% men, who believe that women should obey their husbands at all times? Did you know that? Okay. And the Harvard Business Review has done a study which says that gender equity in families is where it begins if we want successful workplaces. And this happens in three ways. Women get great opportunities if they have a supportive husband or a partner at home. They bring in more into the families in terms of income. The second way is that you have men who are good role models for their children. Their children turn out to be in equitable families. And I think I said that wrong, but no matter. The third one is that men find it easier then to talk about what they need in their leave and the workload that they need to take on. They find it easier to talk about in the workplaces. So the workplace becomes a better place. And here is my story, which is I was in a marriage where I was the cash cow. I was earning a lot, and yet I had to look after my children. I had to look after my in-laws. I had to take care of everything else around, plan activities, do all of that, until when I was 36, I decided that I was going to start swimming against the current. And it's taken 20 plus years, but today I'm proud to say that my home is an equitable home, and my children, the legacy that I leave my children is that of equity in families. So without further ado, I'm going to invite our panelists, who are amazing people and have a lot to share, onto the stage. So Vani Subramanian, can I have you here? She's a documentary filmmaker, a women's rights activist, and currently creative director at Reframe Institute of Art and Expression, an initiative that produces, mentors, and disseminates artistic efforts that respond to contemporary social and political challenges. Vani, could I have you on stage? Jyoti Sagar. He's the founder of J. Sagar Associates and KNS Partners, an intellectual property boutique. He is Associate President, Society of Indian Law Firms. He is also chairman of the Society for Urban Regeneration of Gurgaon, which focuses on long-term sustainable development issues of Gurgaon, and trustee of Genesis Foundation, which provides critical medical assistance to underprivileged children suffering from congenital heart defects. Jyoti, may we have you on stage, please? So all the people who are coming on stage have tremendous credentials, and it's not possible for me to get all of them out. So this is just a snippet. Shilpa Ajwani, a former corporate CEO turned entrepreneur who thrives on purpose as a business strategist and leadership advisor, and she is the founder of Unomantra, a digital global community for women entrepreneurs. Shilpa, proud to have you here. Sumitra Mishra. Beneath Sumitra's calm and easy demeanor is a gritty and passionate woman who enjoys challenging social norms. Wow. and innovating solutions for social impact. She is best described as a social justice champion and social change entrepreneur. She is the executive director of Mobile Creches. Sumitra, welcome. So while we are thinking about what all our speakers so far have said and what Andrea said, I'm going to ask you, Shilpa, as CEO of Tupperware, a very successful company with a very successful husband as well and in a traditional family background, what were the challenges that you faced? And how have you navigated the challenges of this traditional family structure while being in a leadership role professionally? What could have been done by government or policymakers to help families become more gender equal?
Good morning, everybody. What an amazing day, and I'm so glad that we are kicking off with this very vital discussion. So yes, I have been blessed to be in a traditional family, a successful one by any standards. We gave birth, my husband and I, to our son 21 years ago. And he came full 1 month ahead of time because I was so busy running around doing meetings to finish with things before I went for maternity leave. And in those years, the maternity leave was just about 3 months. Now, since this little man decided to come ahead of time, we found in a nuclear family totally, ourselves as totally unprepared for what it takes to become parents, first-time parents. And here, suddenly we realized we didn't have access to a reliable daycare or a creche, which is why I value your work so much. We realized that finding a nanny was next to impossible, somebody you could trust your baby with. And thirdly, I didn't realize that how valuable I was back at the office, because it was barely 2.5 months after his birth that I started getting calls. And these were genuine because our managing director at that point in time, an expat, was suddenly finding himself in a very tricky situation culturally. And he needed someone, a woman Friday, to really go and make sure that those fires are put out. So I had no choice. I had to go get back to work early. And I still remember sitting and crying, and my husband saw me, and I said, I'm going to leave everything. This is not worth it. How can I leave him alone and go? We're not fully prepared. And my husband at that point in time made me sit down, and he said, you're emotional, and that's fine. You have all right to as a mother. I know it's difficult. But this will not always remain the same. The baby will grow up. And after a few years, when you have so much time on your hand, you will feel that it's the same baby who you love so much that has become the reason for you to leave a very successful career. He said, you have a lot happening for you, will happen for you. We'll do this together. And from that day to now, we are in it together. What the government could have done, helped me with accredited creches, maybe centers with trained nannies who help. I was privileged to have in-laws and parents who really doubled up and helped us. But I think the workplace could have had a lot more policies. And those were not the years of work from home. Flexibility was looked down upon. So I think that is something I would have very much cherished to make my life easier, our life easier as well.
Awesome. I love the fact the mic isn't on. Okay.
You can use this, yeah.
Thank you. I love the fact that you said that we gave birth. That was amazing. And I think maybe the point that you brought up, you have trained nannies. Maybe there's something there that we can have, like we train everybody else, maybe we can have somebody who takes up training of nannies and provide services like that to young mothers. I don't know. At the workplace, it's important to have creches or some place that you can have the children come in and be taken care of. Thanks, Shilpa. That was great. We give birth. Love that. So the Sumitra, as someone from a traditional joint family from a conservative town, you broke many barriers of gender stereotypical expectations. You must have faced many challenges, right? Especially when you decided to separate from your husband and live as a single woman and a single mother. Can you share some gender-related challenges you faced? And what support structures, systems, and policies could have helped you on your journey?
Thank you, Heena, and thank you, Talentnomics and Ipshita, for convincing me to come and sit under these lights to talk about a personal story, because there is so much more that I can talk about, picking the cue from Shilpa on childcare and the burden of childcare from my professional identity. Yes, I do come from a joint family from a very small town called Cuttack in Odisha. I grew up in a traditional family amongst 15 odd cousins, and we were 3 sisters. But before I even start to talk about gender barriers and what that experience has been, let me put out my privilege cards on the table. I come from an upper caste family, upper middle class family, an educated woman, a financially independent woman, and a woman who knows how to make a choice and take a decision in life. And yet, despite that, it hasn't been like this ever since. I think the first battle where you realize, where even before you realize that you are a girl in the family and therefore you are different, was fought by my mother when she had to convince my grandparents and her sundry in-laws to ensure that as her firstborn, I got into an English medium convent school, because the norm then was girls go to the next door government school in the native language education. So that was a battle that my mom fought. But then it went on to me being the first girl in the family who entered a co-ed college, because the norm was girls will go up and go into a women's college. That then led to me being the first girl in the family to step out of home to go stay in a hostel and study outside of the state, which was really unheard of in our family at least. Yes, that was a battle to fight, and that was a battle that I fought actively for myself. But with a caveat that, since you're so headstrong and you've got these marks and you've got this seat in this hostel, you will be only allowed to go out to study, undertake this course, if you come back and get married when we ask you to come back and get married. I was 19 years old, and I thought, that's my ticket to freedom. That, yes, I just need to get out of this town. I just need to just see the world, right? So I said, okay, sure, but just make sure that whoever you choose for me to get married, make sure that I'm not dropping out of my education. And lo and behold, they did find a guy and a family who allowed me to continue my studies. And so before I completed the second year of my graduation, I was called upon to come home and get married. It was a big band baja barat between families. And then I went back to complete my education, of course. And then work. So ever since I finished my education, I moved to Delhi to stay with my husband finally, and then started working. But very soon, and the work story has a side story, that the very choice that I trained to work in the field of disability was perceived by my family at that time as social work. And अच्छी घर की लड़कियां social work करना CV में, marriage market में higher points है. So I also knew that, to become an architect or study law or engineering or technology was going to be a harder battle. So probably that conditioning was already there in me. But nevertheless, it was something that I drove with passion. Very soon when I started working in the first couple of years, I realized that I was no longer working because I'm a achhi ghar ki bahu doing acha kaam. I was working to put food on the table. And that really shifts the mindset, that you are responsible to work, to get your income and to sustain your family. Long story short, very quickly I also became the first family to go to both sets of parents and say, I want an out. 10 years, almost 15 years after our marriage, to say, this is not working out and I want an out. So usme bhi, all of that, you're too headstrong, have you tried enough, you are a, very, single-headed girl. So, but fortunately, at that point of time, my parents stood up for me. It wasn't easy for them. They stood up for me, but they had to go and convince my grandfather, who was the patriarch of the family, that she really wants an out. And that was a hard battle for my parents. So that was difficult, but that happened. And then I think the last bastion to break was that post the separation and the divorce, I started living in with my partner. And I said, I'm not going to get married again. So here I am, this woman from this small town who has a live-in partner and a blended family, but who then paved the way for many other younger cousins and extended family members. I'm happy about that.
Awesome, that's amazing. You had it started with a mother that supported you when you wanted to study, right? And you went on to become a role model for other people. So the ripple of change is something that you have started as well. That's awesome. What could have helped you? What systems and policies could have helped you on your journey, Sumitra?
So I think what really helped me was that, there wasn't a difference in our family for boys and girls in terms of access to education. I think the first and the most important thing that I'm grateful for is that I had good education, solid education. The second thing that helped within the family dynamics is that at the end of this, the big bad family picture that I have painted, it was basically a stable family, a stable childhood that was provided to me. And that helped build resilience to be able to come here and speak about my life with this strength. The power for a woman to make a choice is the biggest power. And I think that power lies within family systems to be able to give to young girls.
So education is something that we are coming back to again and again.
Education is definitely important. A happy childhood, a secure, violence-free childhood within the homes is another important thing. In terms of support systems, let me tell you, with all my privileges and all my access to information, when I wanted a recourse to what can I do when I'm trapped in a bad marriage, there were two things that I was desperately seeking help for that I couldn't find. Was that, do I have a community with whom I can talk to in a safe space? Can I share my experiences and know what others are going through? There was such a stigma and silence around it. And the second thing was that despite my privileges and being financially independent, if I had to pick my young daughter and step out of the house, I just need a shelter. I just need some distance from this environment. I had no place to go.
Yeah.
I think those were the two big barriers that I faced.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Sumitra. And Jyoti, this comes to you because coming from the legal profession, these are points that we have discussed earlier. So you are an example of one of the rare men whose wife has also had a very successful career, and you both have raised a family together. What was your inspiration, and what did you do to build a gender-equitable family? And as per you, what can be done to promote gender equity families in society?
Thank you, Heena. So, first of all, it's a formidable panel here, and I'm an isolated man here. But, so I heard, Heena, you gave some stats of 62% of people felt that wives should sort of obey their husbands. I think these guys who did the survey probably hadn't met my mother and my wife. All right, so it actually, so for us and in our family, this was never actually a subject. It is not a question, it was a given. And it starts, I think, from what I heard and what I learned and experienced as a child. So my mom lost her father when she was 12 years old. She had a completely illiterate mother and 4 younger siblings at the age of 12. And this was in what is now Pakistan. And she gave up her studies. She was in the 7th grade to bring up, to help keep the hearth warm. So stitching and candle making and book binding and paper bag making and so on. And for 4 years she did that. And after 4 years, when some things had stabilized, she went back and completed 4 years of missed education in 1 year. Wow. So what she kind of instilled in all of us was that it's Nari Shakti. Women can do it. It's not that, they are equal in every way. And I, in an interesting thing, a lot of commonality with what sort of Andrea's background was. And I know she's probably listening or not listening. So both my parents also started their lives as primary school teachers. And I came from a family with 3 other siblings who are girls. So I was the only boy. And you are now talking of the 50s and the 60s.
So now you're used to this panel, right?
Sorry?
The panel, you should be used to the panel.
Yes. So I was the boy. And those days, as you can imagine, even now, in traditional families, boys are treated differently. But, well, lo and behold, I wasn't. In fact, my 3 sisters, all of them are PhDs. I'm the least educated in the family, as far as formal education is concerned. Well, my mom and dad made sure that they are equipped to stand on their 2 little feet and face the world. So I came from that kind of a background, and then of course, Prema is my wife is a very special person. She's headstrong. She's a rebel. She rebelled against her father, left her home, quit college because she said, this is not just good enough, I don't want to do this, and experimented with new things. And clearly part of her, and we met when we were very young. I was just 23 and she was 22 and a half when we got married. And we invited our respective sets of parents to our wedding to say, we are getting married on this date, would you like to come? Mine came, hers didn't, but things kind of sorted out after a few weeks. So we kind of just been partners, and whatever Prema's wanted to do, I've been there supporting her. So she started her ventures, one after another. She's been a serial entrepreneur in many ways. So in a way, I learned early enough that you don't come in her way, because she's headstrong and she's going to get what she wants. So I think the mutual understanding, obviously, in couples is very important. We were a nuclear family. My parents, our family was a nuclear family, and we are a nuclear family. And therefore, the only support structure you have is each other. And if you're not going to appreciate aspirations and ambitions and hopes and expectations of your partner, I think you're going to be in trouble. If you're a sensitive human being. So for me, therefore, it was really the upbringing, what I saw in my own home, in my parents' home, in their own lives, which kind of shaped what we did together as a couple, because Prema built some enormous, amazing businesses and professionalized the public relations industry in this country.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're coming back here to education, and you've brought in a new one, which is parenting. And this is where people can make a difference, where parents can make a difference. And we start at the family level again, that the changes we try and make at the workplace or in other societies doesn't work if it doesn't happen at home. So as parents, as men and women who are raising families, it's extremely important to be equity partners in the relationship. Thank you, Jyoti. Vani, now to you. You are someone who has been focusing on, you've created a beautiful film, an award-winning film on the female feticide, the girl child. And you've seen how media has had a huge influence on changing behaviors. There have been studies to show the impact, and you've been a part of those studies as well. Many ads are now being made that are more sensitive to this gender equity. In what ways has media, particularly cinema, influenced perceptions about gender roles within families? Any examples that you can share? And what more can media do to bring about societal change and break stereotypical roles for women and men in families?
Well, first, thank you. And there's a bit of incredulity that I'm actually sitting on this panel, because in many ways my life doesn't fit this space of actually being in corporate jobs. It's something I chose to leave, actually, at a point when, just when my career graph was sort of beginning to rise, I decided that I wanted to focus on things I wanted to do. And that's where I want to actually just share a little personal thing before I go to the question you asked, Heena. You know, we're talking about family and we're talking about aspirations, and I come from a family which was progressive, well, privileged, like Sumitra shared, upper caste, upper to middle class, all of that. But my mother did not have much opportunity to study, certainly not as much as she wanted to. So her big aspiration was that the daughter should study, they should be able to be financially independent. Of course, she didn't want us to trade on the job of being a good wife and mother. Okay? But she did want us to be that independent. The reason I bring this up is that because when I decided to quit corporate life, when my other friends became consultants, my mother was very impressed. She thought it was a move up in life. But when I told her that I'm going part-time consultant, she suddenly had tears in her eyes. And she's like, sorry, what do you want to be? You want to just be a housewife? And I'm like, firstly, there's nothing called just a housewife. You should know that. You raised 3 children. You brought up a whole family. You held us together through thick and thin. And yeah, I want to do other things with my life. So I want to make time. So I think so rebellion has context. I think in each, we also challenge each other. And over time, she saw what else I did with my life and came to value that. So I'm saying familial support is not just in one direction, it's also dynamic. Because as your aspirations change, as your imagination of your life changes. Yeah? So I think that that's something we should keep sort of in mind. Because you yourself don't know how you're going to change. When I started working at 20, I didn't think that by 28 I'd want to quit. Right? So I think that those are also dynamisms that we all have to keep working with. It's not a given that once you set the foundation, it'll work. So equitability, imagination of equality, these are all things that you have to keep working at. And I think that's sort of the problem with, now to come to your question about the media, is that there is a dominant trope. And it's not just the media, cinema as cinema, it's everywhere. Right? It's in reportage, it's in what gets covered, how it gets covered, and what gets eyeballs. And I say this consciously in a room full of women who actually exercise, women and men who exercise a fair amount of power. I think we are aware about how much corporate sponsorship, wealth, CSR in multiple dimensions now. I think corporates have big roles to play. And therefore, I think whether it's the way in which we approach the question of equitability, equitable representation. Like for instance, if you look at the features on women, they're either the victim or the hero, right? You don't have normal stories of transformation, of everydayness, of, so you will have these strange kinds of, and as you start looking at media representation. So normally when we say that, we mean ads, we mean the movies and the kind of sexism that's dominant. But I think we need to look beyond that and see how normalized it is in everyday reporting, in everyday, the way we represent things. The way we think hum samaj seva karenge, that we will help those women. Those women also actually know a lot of what they want to do. They have a lot to teach us. And a lot of change has come from them. And we can talk about that maybe in the next round of questions. But I think that we need to really examine how women are being represented across the board, right? And that is something I think we're not doing enough. It's easy to respond to this obviously misogynistic, sexist representations. What is tough to untangle is the more subtle. What we have got normalized in our brain, where we've got used to seeing a certain kind of image as being how women will be represented. Because, women dress like this, women behave like this. There's a normalization of all that, which I think is where the problem lies. So it's in all of us.
Right. And this is also something that we focus only on women, where men are not a part of it, where actually they are, because the mindset shift starts there. So, thanks, Vani. There's lots that I could talk to you about on this. Shilpa, moving to you and your role as a leader, can you share with us what actions you took or could have taken in an organization like Tupperware that actively promoted gender equity within your employees' families?
So from my experience, by the time I became a managing director, I realized through research, through active experience, life and lived experiences as well, that women tend to leave the workforce. And in India especially, we are seeing dwindling numbers year after year now in the last several years. There were 5 big reasons, and most of them are universal. We see them across the globe as well. The first one is marriage. The second is motherhood. The third is mobility, or the lack of it, right? Fourth is very interesting because a lot of it is intangible. It is microaggressions at work and at home, in society, which you experience as a working woman, wanting it all inside and outside the home. And the fifth is very interesting. These are myths. I'll give you an example, or a couple of examples of these myths. The first myth that we all know or we've heard is that, women leave the workforce because there's a glass ceiling. The reality is there is actually a broken rung right in the middle, where after the first child, and this is a report from Princeton, who did a research that most women tend to leave the workforce after their firstborn. Because we as families, we as a society, we as organizations are not willing to give them that extra support, which a person who has given birth to a new life more than deserves. And she's a valuable contributor both at home and outside in the organization as well. So there's a broken rung before the glass ceiling afflicts women. An example of a myth again is that, once a woman has a baby, she is less committed to her work. And she's going to start demanding all kinds of flexibility. And that's a myth. McKinsey did a study, and they found that one of the top 3 reasons people, men and women both want out of their organizations is flexibility. It's not just women alone demanding flexibility. Men equally want it too. But the women are branded as if they are hankering for all these special favors, these shortcuts, the extra support, playing the victim card. So all that beautifully adds to this whole myth that a woman is safer at home taking care of the babies. So much so she starts believing the same as well. Right? I told you I was nearly in that stage myself, just because of feeling a lack of support at a very vulnerable moment in my own life. So as I saw and observed these 5 different reasons why a lot of people women exit the workforce, I decided that firstly, in my place, I will take on the mantle of being a role model and mentor to many, many, many women working with me within my organizations, whichever I was serving. And by the time I had come to Tupperware, I was the managing director, but this was a journey. And I realized I will not give up in between. Initially, it was for my own sake, but later on, it became for the sake of many others. And I have a brilliant example in this room. I'm so happy to meet her after many years. a lady I mentored and got reverse mentored for many years. She didn't give up on her career, has a brilliant career, has a daughter who's just become a PhD, and one of the hardest working women who managed it all. And we held each other at moments in our lives where we both needed that support. So that's what
Wow.
mentorship does. The second thing, Heena, and I would just finish with that, is that whenever we are in a leadership position, men and women both, I saw with my own example, we can make a difference. And we can make a difference from the hiring processes, to the onboarding, to developing, to retaining. All of this can be our mandate if we decide to make it our mandate. And I decided to take diversity, equity, inclusion, belongingness, not as words, but as my life's mission, which is why I'm here today as well. And I could see that organizations where I entered, where we had maybe just 10, 15, 20% women, by the time I left that organization, we were 50-50,
Wow.
each and every time.
Awesome.
So it started with me where I could make a difference.
So before we move further, can I ask the lady that Shilpa is talking about to please stand so that we can see who you are?
Joya Banerjee, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And, if I can have a microphone, if I take a minute of yours.
Later, can we get back to that? Yeah, thank you. So, Jyoti, are there any legal reforms or implementation of existing laws that can actively contribute to breaking patriarchy and promoting gender-equitable families? What else is necessary to bring about societal changes?
Okay. I know we had a discussion on this earlier on when we were speaking about the session. Having practiced law now for 47 years, I think there is, law plays maybe about 50% of the role. You can have laws. You can make many laws, like you speak about the panchayat system or reservation for women sarpanches, and then you have instances of pradhan pati, whereas the sarpanch's husband, who was the former pradhan, still continues to be the pradhan. So law has a very important role. But a lot of the things that happen inside the house, inside your home, that's something which is not going to just you cannot legislate that. So I personally think that the other 50%, the other side of the coin is very important, which again brings you back into education, primary education, instilling in minds of children the whole idea of gender equality. That's where it stands. So if somebody who's basically not been sensitized to this, and at the age of 32 is faced by a law which says in your organization there must be 50% women, will never have that understanding and appreciation at all. So I think, so my mind, yes, you can have laws. We've not got a law on, on reservations in parliament. We have requirement of at least one woman director on corporate boards. But can you really legislate that? Give you an example of corporate boards. In a lot of the promoter-driven families, a daughter or someone like that would be just to check in the box. So the problem just relying on purely on law is check in the box. And I think that doesn't change societies.
Absolutely.
You have to check hearts.
Beautiful.
And not boxes.
Beautiful. So I think what you say about the law, being a lawyer yourself, is very interesting, because a lot of women who go through divorces and who are abused do not have recourse to any kind of support, like you mentioned, Sumitra. And Vani, you had started Saheli to fill that gap, to try and fill that gap. And again, sorry?
I came into Saheli long after this started.
Okay, sorry. So I think here again we come back to the fact that education and in families, teaching our children and creating those equitable families ourselves is one of the most important things that we can do as people who are interested in creating an Equiverse. So, Sumitra, you've noted in your earlier conversation that gender inequity permeates through all strata of society. Can you share with us your insights on the gender-related inequities faced by women and children you support through mobile creches. Also, can you share any impactful initiatives that you have taken to promote gender equity within marginalized families?
So, despite what I said in the first round, as you can see, I'm no abla nari, poor woman. I'm unapologetic nari shakti.
Awesome.
But what do I do with this power? What do we all do with our individual and collective power in this room? I work with women informal workers, your domestic workers, women in the construction sites, tea garden, tea pluckers, brick kiln workers. And what do we do through mobile creches? We provide quality creches. A universal care, childcare is a universal need for all of us. But have you ever paused to imagine where our domestic worker in the morning is leaving her young baby at home? Where is the brick kiln worker who migrate as a family, leave their children when they have to put in 14 hours of work? Mobile Creches for more than 50 years now has been providing quality creches and daycare services to children under 6 years of age for women informal workers. But I'm not here to talk about the work of mobile creches, connecting it to what we've been speaking since morning. Just for a minute, imagine that if you're talking of glass ceilings and a broken middle rung, I'm talking about sticky floors. There is no middle rung, there is no glass ceiling to break if you haven't cleaned the sticky floors. These are women who don't make a choice to work. These are women who have to work to survive, which means that every day of their lives, they are fighting with their male and patriarchal women within their families to step out to work. They are making dangerous choices for their childcare, and they are taking compromised choices for their older children's education and a right to life and opportunities into the future. These women, what we say in our language, are burdened by the triple burden, which means that they have to do paid work, but they also have this high burden of unpaid domestic work, and then they have the whole care burden of looking after children and the elderly, the disabled, everyone else within the family. The time use survey of Government of India says, and men, this is for you to note, that women spend 8 hours a day more in the unpaid work than for every 1 hour a man uses in a day. So something for you to reflect on. If you're going to monetize, someone said monetizing the unpaid care. If you're going to monetize, that's a whole economic, macroeconomic, and there's an international push around it. But basically, the point that I'm trying to make is that, you know what you also said, Heena, that it starts at the beginning. It starts within the family. And yes, Jyoti, I agree that we work with labor laws and entitlements for maternity and childcare, and we know that we have the best policies and the laws. It's the enforcement that is a problem. But basically, it is the patriarchal attitude within the homes and the families that we need to change. And for that, Vani, you play a big role. All of us play a big role over there. So I'll just end by saying that, you know, what is a woman fighting against here? She's fighting for her own agency to be able to provide a better future. Someone said, someone said that, my mother didn't want me to, wanted us to have education. All our mothers want. A poor working woman also wants that. She wants to lift her children out of that cycle of poverty line. So what can we do about it? That's the clarion call for all of us.
What kind of policies and programs do you think can help further?
So I would say that, in a country that we are obsessed with creating more policies and programs, and I work very closely with policymakers at all levels, just take a pause, man. Just enforce what is there. Just enforce what is already there. Let's not talk of more policies and more instruments. There's enough. If we just follow the SDG, leave no one behind, that's enough for us to see how we are not going to leave anyone behind us. What do we need to therefore do is, this whole mindset change, yes, the one thing that we can do is whether it is the maternity bill or it's a child care, we can make it gender transformative. That it's not about women workers wanting child care, because then that becomes a cost for the company, right? But children belong to the family. It belongs to the fathers also. It's for all workers, all employees having the choice for child care. I think these gender transformative things is what we need to do. The other thing is that in our own little worlds, big worlds, we think of everyone. It's an Equiverse that includes poor women and poor families and poor children. And the third thing, and I'll stop here, certainly, Heena, is that we work with very young infants, babies, and toddlers. Science says that 80% of the brain has developed by the time the child is 3 years old. You change the beginning of the story, you change the whole story later.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
You
Well said.
start with gender equity within families where the children are growing up, within daycares and creches, within preschool programs. You grow a generation of equal citizens. They're not little children, they're building their agency. You grow them as equal citizens within the families. Thank you.
So I have to tell you a very positive story from my life. My part-timer had surgery recently. She had some life-threatening surgery that needed to be done. Her husband, who is works for the government as a road sweeper, he took time off, unpaid leave, to look after their 2-year-old child. And he was doing all the cooking and cleaning at home while she was recuperating. So maybe it starts there, yeah. Vani, back to you. Given your involvement with Saheli, can you share a transformative story that highlights the changes needed in our policies? Again, why we are on policies and laws and infrastructure that can lead to gender equity in families?
I want to share a couple of different things. We're talking a lot about education, and actually Sumitra talked about leaving home and coming to live in a hostel. I think these are systems that are now increasingly, they are private hostels, etc. But I remember a time when women's rights groups actually put pressure on the government to start working women's hostels in Delhi. And if a city like Delhi did not have working women's hostels, the legitimacy of being able to come and live in a hostel helps a woman navigate getting out of the home, right? As opposed to saying, I'll go and live as a PG. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Parents will let you go if you have an established infrastructure.
A safe environment.
A safe environment in which you can go. And I think I think we can't leave that public domain out entirely. We need to think about what are support systems. Today, there are some shelter homes for women, for instance, or children, but they are in a terrible state. They're extremely violent, extremely controlling, and manipulative spaces. They are run by the government. I feel that these are social securities that should be available to you. If you're leaving an abusive marriage, if you're leaving an abusive natal home, right? If you're a queer person leaving an abusive home who can't deal with that is homophobic, where are you going to go? The only spaces that exist right now is what activists provide that are somewhat safe. And they're not in a position to provide the kind of infrastructure that is required. So I think there is the family, but there is the outside world. And I think the outside world needs more intervention by us. We need to hold, as governments, the safety of citizens and vulnerable citizens is certainly a responsibility that I think we should be thinking about more proactively. All of us engage with governments in different ways, and these are things that I think are really important.
Absolutely, because I think all of us have seen people who have run back to abusive marriages, to to unsafe spaces where you and I have known of somebody who's been killed like that, and they don't have places to go to. So I think what we could do, this has given me an idea as well for my next point. It's look out for ways that we can, as interested parties, we can contribute towards creating safe spaces for people like this. This is a point which is other than what we've been talking about, education and parenting, which comes from the top. So when we handle families and we handle children, we are teaching them about equity in families, but what we are not doing is providing safety for those who want to get away from families that are totally inequitable and abusive. So thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions in the audience? This is the time now. Okay.
You want to start with the lady who wanted to speak?
Yes.
Hello.
Jaya.
Hello, madam. I have a question.
After Jaya, if that's okay with you?
Please.
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here, and the day was awesome, so I really don't have a question, but going by the discussion that we were having in the panel, I can tell you my story. At 24, 25, I had become a widow, and that was the time I had to take a call. How do I navigate further? I think the reason why I'm here today is a lot of reasons, but one of the fundamental reasons is because my family stood by me. If my parents and my entire family did not stand by me, I wouldn't have been here. So family, standing by for all the right reasons, wrong reasons, whatever, but standing by and giving that faith that I'm there with you, I think that is the fundamental that we could look forward to. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jaya.
Yes, madam. I'm Dr. Jagdish Shivhare, professor and ex-scientist ISRO. I have a general question. What specific innovation practices, disruptions, and smart technologies are needed to resolve the issues with gender and sustainability? I repeat the question. What specific innovation practices, disruptions, and smart technologies are needed to resolve the issues with gender and sustainability?
I'll take this question. Just in a very simple way to say, from AI to tech, there are lots of solutions out there. I think the most low-cost and effective solution to bring gender equity is to start re-engineering our own thoughts to think equal and to start practicing it within our families. Investment in infrastructure is not going to bring gender equity in this society.
That was great, Sumitra. Thank you.
Heena, can I go?
Please do.
Yeah, so I'm Geeta. We associate with Talenomics, and it's driven by passion, and we are all attached with passion. Actually, more than anything, I think these are great conversations in terms of normalizing and creating level playing fields. I think we're all sitting here in this room as well as on the panel. We're coming from entitlement, from privilege. But I think how beautifully and sensitively you've called out that it's not us, but it's down below that needs to get a level playing field and an opportunity. And I think it's very important now that we redefine family definition. It's no more traditional, different gender families, single families, caregivers as families, and extending that entire re-looking at what families mean. Because if you're looking at Equiverse, if you're wanting safe spaces, then I think defining families and expanding the scope of family, even what Vani said, extending families, you may be nuclear, you may be completely alone, then who is there for you whom you can call out as families? I think that is an important normalizing that we need to do, that families are all of different structures, shapes, and variety that we need to acknowledge.
Thank you, Geeta. Yeah, please.
I really appreciate your point about families, but I wanted to go to the earlier point that you made. I think the question is not, it's not a unidirectional thing that, that we are privileged and therefore we can have equity, and that equity does not exist at all in poorer, more marginalized, whatever. And I want to give an example, and I think it's a very important one for all of us privileged women to remember, is that we now have a law on sexual harassment at the workplace, right? All of us have it. We know that, oh, okay, now at least it's an acknowledged, you spoke of microaggressions. I think that these are all micro, major, all kinds of assaults that all of us have gone through as women of our generation without the space to talk about it. At least now there is a recognition. But I just want to throw in a reminder here that that law did not come because of women like us. It came because of a rural Dalit woman called Bhavri Devi, who fought against being gang raped by upper class men while she was working in a Sarkari women's development program. She took the fight all the way to the Supreme Court with the help of women's groups, and then we got the guidelines, on the basis of which we got a law. So I feel like change comes from many directions, and that's what I was referring to in the beginning when I said that we need to be a little bit more alert to lives outside of our worlds. And I think that a lot of inspiration lies there. And I think that that's important for us to acknowledge as women who have also benefited from a lot of other women's struggles.
Yeah, very powerful, Vani. We often don't think or remember the women who have fought to get us where we are today, the privilege that we actually enjoy. Any questions?
Hello everyone. That was a great panel. My question is directed towards Ms. Shilpa. You spoke about mentorship, and I'm so glad that you spoke about it. It reminded me of a time when I was sitting for an interview, and it was a university interview, and I was asked to, tell who my female mentor is. And my first reflex was, why do I need to have a female mentor? Why can't the mentor be just, anyone? So what it reminded me of was two burning questions that I have. A, because of the lack of female decision makers in our country, all over. How do we ensure that, we also make men feminist mentors and equally participative in the journey? Secondly, how do we resolve the dilemma of mentorship itself? So, for example, like female politicians have this dilemma of either addressing feminist issues or working on hardcore national security issues and other issues. How do we resolve the fact in workspaces that female mentors, A, they promote and empower other women to continue their journey, to feel safe, and at the same time also equally focus on the fact that work keeps growing and there's more empowerment in terms of decision making that those women also make? So these are two questions that I had.
So such a pertinent question, and mentoring, you rightly caught, is a word very close to my heart, having lived it and benefited from it as well. You're in the right room today because what you just described is actually in the purpose statement of Talentnomics, the vision and mission with which Talentnomics actually was started. And there are many, many organizations today that are joining hands and understanding the power of introducing mentorship formally within their organizations. So something which doesn't come intuitively to us because we haven't re-engineered our mindsets enough yet, I think has to come from the ripple created by conscious people, conscious organizations, and conscious societies. I think it all has to happen together, and one feeding into the other, benefiting from the other. And that's where you will see around you starting, though it's still a trickle. I would love to see an explosion of the same, the right kind of explosion in this world, of really mentorship, where it doesn't matter if it is a man or a woman, right? When you need a mentor in your life, that person magically appears. That's really the world that I really dream of. And we would also, by having more women as leaders, women in every place where an important decision is being made. If there is a woman, like I described before, she has a trickle-down effect. She becomes a natural role model. And there are many who then dare to dream just because they see somebody sitting in flesh and blood in that particular position. What is not helping us today is that many women politicians right at the top, even prime ministers, presidents, have decided to just maybe give up. So that was, a little bit of a setback that we saw post the pandemic, during the pandemic also happening. We are seeing the same even in boards as well as the C-suite around the world as well. And this is because women are burning out. The triple burden is not easy to carry year after year after year. And when they should be peaking at their careers in their late 40s, 50s, many of them are so burnt out. successful outwardly, burnt out within. That they decide to leave and look for just a respite in life. And when there are less women as shining examples out there, the ones coming after, they don't have people they can relate to. And that's where they would give up. So I think formal mentoring pushed through initially till it becomes a norm. And men invited to every room where conversations like these are happening. Virtual rooms, real rooms. We need to do this together. We can't do it. Only women talking to each other and telling each other things. Yeah, that's what I really feel.
Hi, my name is Rajat. I'm from Shivnada University. Thank you for this opportunity. The sort of room, the number of people in the room has already doubled since we started. So I think that's great to see. I don't have a question for anybody specific in the panel, but just a general comment on sort of the examples that one uses very often, and this is in the spirit of what Andrea was saying in the morning about evidence-based sort of decision-making. So while gender is to a large extent universal, I think these references that are often made, and this is a sort of a thing that we do across all policy spaces, whether it is gender or otherwise, I think more and more of the references and the evidence should come from within. And, you know, a country of 1.4 billion people, there are so many sort of ways that research can put out something that is specific to India. And those ought to be the references that we use to create the evidence and thereby to change the laws. And I'm sure Talentomics will be able to do that. The other question is about, not question, the comment is on what Sumitra said about the sort of policy and enforcement. I think enforcement in India, given my experience in policy, will always be laggard. You know, you cannot, sometimes people say it's infructuous to talk about policy and enforcement separately, because policy, when you design policy, it should be one that is amenable to enforcement. So that debate becomes infructuous, but I think my experience suggests that enforcement will always be with a lag. Courts will come into the picture, you like it or not, and therefore we should not stop trying to change policy in India and wait for enforcement to become sort of good. As Jyoti would probably know, courts definitely come into anything, any sphere, whether it's gender or otherwise. So I don't think we should put a stop to policy changes.
Just on the last bit, I do stand corrected. I didn't mean to be flippant about not looking at transformative policies and legal instruments. And I totally agree with you that enforcement will always have a lag. Even for the policies and the legal instruments that we have, for all of us in the room and outside, to hold duty bearers accountable to what is existing is a part of our role as well. As we learn from the current times and build on more progressive policies and systems, yeah.
Can I just add a little bit? You know, the other thing I would agree with you is that, you know, sometimes when people are fighting for one more law and everyone's like, "Arey yaar, jo hai, you know, wo implement nahi ho raha hai," I think we need to recognize that sometimes it is because something is not being recognized as a problem. So if you take, for instance, sex-selective abortion, it's something that it was rampant because the technology existed and because patriarchy exists and because the desire for a male child exists. And it was rampant, but there was no recognition of it as a problem. Sometimes also law helps you frame what's right and wrong and then work with that to create some public awareness. I'm not saying it stopped therefore, but I'm saying it also helps frame it, which is useful in other ways, you know, to create public awareness as well. Yeah.
There's somebody here who has a, yes, please. The lady.
So I'm Lavang Khare, I'm a mother and a communications consultant. And Shilpa, I love what you said at the beginning. We had a baby. And my son came a month early as well. I think what I want to tell Andrea for sure is every man in my family can cook and clean. It's not just my immediate family, and I think it's because of what our parents instilled in us. My grandmother was a double MA in Hindi literature and Sanskrit, and she studied after she had 2 children. and she would have been 100 years old today if she was still alive. So I think it's all about families, and it's lovely to see and hear what all of you said. There's been a question on machine learning and AI, but I want to say that it's only about fostering open communication and giving everybody an equal opportunity to take a decision. That's what will make the difference. The policies can happen, but it's families which will actually make the difference. Thank you so much for organizing this, Ipshita. It's just such an emotional moment to be here.
Thank you so much, Lavang. Would you stand up, please, so that the mic can come to you?
I have the mic here, if I may speak. Morning, everybody, and thank you very much for such a beautiful session. I'm right behind here. My name is Neeti, and I'm an entrepreneurship mindset and design thinking coach. And I loved every bit of the shares that you had, and it was, a lot resonating, I think, with most of the people sitting here. What I would like to share is, while women are ready to speak up, it's actually the men who need to start listening to what they have to say. So sadly, men are conditioned since their childhood on the kind of roles that they feel that in the family they should be playing and their spouse should be playing. And when a supposedly headstrong woman stands up and she wants to speak her mind out, no offense meant, but it lands into, a separation or a divorce because the men are not really ready to listen. So what I feel is that, education of the girl child today is, I think, picking up well. Families are going all out of their way to educate the girl child. But I think now what we need to focus and work more on is educating the boy child to be ready to accept that equality which a woman wants. So we all are focusing on, yes, we need to educate our daughters, we need to educate our girls, but are we really educating the boys enough and changing that mindset? Which, as you rightly shared, that it has to happen at very formative years. So I would like to suggest to the room to, maybe approach the education and right at the school level. Of course, the families have to do their bit. The mothers at home have to do their bit. But more than the mothers, I think the fathers also have to do their bit, because how they treat the woman of the house, their wife, is subtly what is adapted by the boy and the son as to how he needs to treat, his sister or wife tomorrow, or his girlfriend or partner tomorrow. And at the formative years in schools, can we not have very focused role plays and education chapters and lessons where they are taught, sensitizing them on what should be expected on the roles?
I'm just going to stand and take my floor.
Can I just
for a long time. First of all, yes, exactly that. We've all talked about education and it being very important. I just want to add to that there are many highly educated women who are being beaten at home, who accept a second class status. So it's not just any kind of education. We need critical dialogues on gender, on the deconstruction of patriarchy with girls and boys both. Then secondly, to add to her point, that actually patriarchal families will never have gender equity. So we need to change the nature of families, and that's very important. We've spoken a lot about how families can support, but I think family is the biggest oppressor, especially of women. It is the intimate oppressor, and that's the problem. We can fight other people, but fighting your husband, your son, your brother, your father, who wants to hate them? You don't want to. But how do you do that? So I think we need to discuss, and no one's spoken about the tyranny of the in-laws. No legal right whatsoever. And yet, boy, how much power. And nobody counters that. Nobody counters that. And in gatherings, we do a lot of gender training. When we speak about the tyranny of the in-laws, there's this kind of, hushed thing, oh my God, women, yeah. But everybody kind of. And about the laws, I just want to add to what you said, Vani, that, in fact, we work in rural areas, urban areas, with education, through education. And we use the laws all the time. I think we need more laws. For example, there isn't a law against marital rape, and it should be there. And we should keep agitating for that. There are so many laws for same-sex marriages. We should agitate. One, it recognizes, and what we say is, hey, look, it's not my opinion. It's not just me, whom I. But yes, there's a law. Sarkar bhi kehti hai ab. And where there are no laws, you really don't know what to say. And I know this Iranian woman, very young, she was 16, and she wanted to get a divorce, and she was very angry. So the Qazi told her, but you agreed to the marriage, hu kiya tha. So she says, hey, but I was just a child. And then she asked him, she said, what's the legal age of marriage? And then he told her that Muslim law, it doesn't exist. After puberty, you can. She said, she went grumbling. She said, but there should be a law, no? So laws are really very important, and the point is people don't know about the laws. It's not just enforcement. They don't know. And when you tell them, I'm telling you, I see women get so empowered, they grow an inch taller because suddenly they feel that they are protected. So we shouldn't give up on the laws. We should keep, and they're not 50%, sir. I think they're 75%. It's the 25% that needs more mindset change and more information.
So
Making sure that people know about the laws.
Here it's about the laws, the information and the awareness about the laws that actually exist, the policies that exist. So the dissemination of information could also be at an earlier age, could be at the school age, for example, for children. It doesn't matter whether they're boys or girls. Last question, we have 30 seconds left. The lady at the back, yes?
Oh, I thought.
Call out. Call out, doesn't matter.
So, if you, no, it's okay. If you want to give her a chance, I'll wait.
Hi, my name is Richa Bahi. I'm a storyteller and a midlife coach. And I listen to a lot of stories of women in midlife, their corporate struggles. I just wanted to add a point here and swim a little bit against the tide. A lot of women who come up to me, they say that they have faced their greatest biases not from men but from women. Women who were leaders, who could manage the house and the career, and when you go to them and you ask for flexibility, the question or the saying is, if we could do, why can't you? Yeah. So I think in corporate sector, we also need to sensitize women leaders also, because every story is not the same. That's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we've run time's up. So
it is the tyranny of the MC. I'm going to cut the session short.
I'm sorry, I'm going to take
I'm going to cut.
Seconds.
So, see, again, ma'am, I'm going to say the same thing. There are other sessions that will also then run late, and then we'll all end late if I continue sort of running this. So, which is the only reason I'm doing this. Don't hate me, but I mean, there are other speakers that are also waiting. Okay.
Yeah, very close. You almost.
The smile.
So do I. Even I'm smiling. Right. So I'm going to take this time. Sorry, tyranny of the MC, but this is woman power here. So just a quick couple of things what to take up from what Shilpa said earlier, that how in corporate lives and the point that Richa just made in the corporate lives. So I have a really short, quick story to share. I was working with this huge company called British Airways for the longest of times. I got this lovely job. It was practically mine for the asking. And lo and behold, when I went for the interview, the HR guy, mind who's asked me this question, the HR head of British Airways South Asia, no less, sits there, and I had a British guy asking me questions. And he turns around, and the only question he asked me was, Namrata, you are a woman, you're married, you've got 2 young kids. This is going to be a new job. How are you going to be coping with the job? I took a very deep breath, really deep breath. And I told him, I said, I don't want to take his name, but what the heck, Aparnesh. I said, Aparnesh, you're married, you have a son, this is a new job for you. I have been in British Airways for the last 12 years. I've got married here, I've had my kids here, you've just come, how do you cope? You should have seen his face. I mean, honest to goodness, he didn't know what the heck to do. The reason I tell this story, and I've told this plenty of times, is I took a really deep breath and I thought to myself in those nanoseconds, what is the worst which will happen to me if I don't now stop him? To me. And that was, needless to say, any guesses? I didn't get the job. So That's a separate matter. However, I made sure that I put my fear aside. And that was a very big thing for me. I was always fairly fearless. However, it meant giving up a job and a company that I loved. It meant being not there. The only thing which kept me going, and I would really request this not from just women, but from every person, it's a question of putting your fear aside. Just for that 1 second. We all are totally bound by our own fears. वो बोलते हैं ना हम अपनी मजबूरियों के दायरे में बंद हो जाते हैं और वो मजबूरियां हमारी खुद की बनाई होती है काफ़ी हद तक क्योंकि जब एक दरवाज़ा बंद होता है तो 10 खिड़कियां खुलती हैं और वो खुलती हैं. I saw it myself and it's got nothing to do with being in a privileged background or coming in from a lower strata or what sort of support system you have, because I found that the women from the roads or anywhere, wherever we are, in the early times, like you said, women are their worst detractors plenty of times, and that happens in the early stage of your life. But at about 40, 45, I found women to be my biggest support system. Women from all walks of life. My help, I can't do without her. She's been with me 16 years. She's my biggest support system. I can probably tell my husband, okay, buddy, see ya, but not her. Because she's seen me through thick and thin. She's seen me through my tears, through my children, through my joys. So just put your fear aside. That's the only point I would like to make.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. MC.